You knocked me down, you thought that I would be out, but I turned lost into found, I finally figured it out. Hey everyone, welcome back to Chasing Success. Now, if you are watching this on YouTube, you see that I have a different setup. What I'm trying to do is, I know video podcasts are becoming very popular in 2022. Now, I do a lot of solo episodes, but I wanted something that was kind of cool, so I got some B-roll in the background. If you want to watch this on YouTube, you can tell what I'm talking about. But today I'm going to be talking about finding the balance between achieving success and maintaining a happy and fulfilling life. Okay, because in today's society, we often equate success to money, power, fame, especially fame, which maybe we'll go into that today. But we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us that we need to work harder, we need to push ourselves to the limit and sacrifice our personal lives in order to achieve success. But the questions that I want to ask today, is that really the only way? And is it possible to chase success without sacrificing happiness? Now, if you are familiar with this show, then you know that that's kind of our tagline. Chasing Success Podcast, the podcast for people on their journey to chase success without sacrificing happiness. So that's why we want to talk about this today. And so the main thing that we're going to be talking about are the pressure to succeed, balancing success and happiness, and then we're going to wrap it up by putting it all together. So the pressure to succeed, and I missed one, defining your own success, but the pressure to succeed. So many of us feel the pressure to succeed, whether it's from our family, our friends, or society, or all of them working together. It almost feels like they're conspiring to make us feel a certain way, or make us feel like we have to do this and that. We're told that success is the key to happiness and that we should do everything in our power to achieve. But again, another question that I want to talk about is, at what cost, right? Is this the only way? Is it possible to chase success without sacrificing happiness? And then at what cost do we put success over happiness, right? So the truth, and this is where I'm going to probably go on some rants, but just stick with me, because this is something that I live and breathe every single day, right? It's not just a podcast. I'm building my company around it. I'm building a software around it. This is what I live and breathe. So the truth, sacrificing our happiness for the sake of success can have serious consequences. And I know that many people probably watching this podcast know the stories of like Ariana Huffington, or certain people who have collapsed because they've put their success over every single thing, their happiness, their family, their friends, eating, whatever the case is. But it can lead to burnout, stress, and even depression. Now, this is where I'm going to go in on a rant, because burnout is not what most people relate it to. When most people say burnout, right, they are specifically talking about being tired, right? So maybe they work the weekend and Monday comes around, they're tired, and they say, I'm burned out. I don't mean to do the inflection in the voice, but that is not what burned out means. That means that you worked for longer than you're used to. You probably didn't give yourself the sufficient nutrients or drink enough water or all that kind of stuff. That's not burnout. That's being tired. Okay. Burnout is something that affects you, and it gradually builds upon itself. And that's why so many people get burned out in the reality of the real term. They get burned out because it's this gradual up motion where you're a little bit tired, you start physically getting sick, you start losing motivation, emotionally you start to question yourself, you possibly go into that depressive mode where nothing can get you out of it. And so if you think about that example there, or that example of how it occurs, burnout is the mental, physical, and emotion combination that ultimately gets you to burnout, right? So just think about that and be careful whenever you're using that, because burnout actually harms you in all three of those areas. And if burned out for long enough time, you'll end up like Ariana Huffington, who passed out and needed to go to the hospital. I think that happened 2 or 3 times, right? So even the people who know about this, and I'm one of them, even the people who know about this still suffer from it. So it's very important to make that a top of mind thing. So just to circle back, because I know I went on a tangent there, sacrificing our happiness for the success or for the sake of success can have serious consequences like burnout, stress, depression. So it's important to remember that success is not a one size fits all concept. Success means different things to different people. And that's why we created this podcast, because we understand that to the topic of this conversation in this portion of the podcast, there's a pressure to succeed, right? And that pressure to succeed often comes at the sacrifice of your happiness, because most people don't talk about, oh, to be successful, you need to be happy, which is true, actually. You look in Shawn Achor's research on positive psychology. If you find a way to enjoy the journey and you are happy, you're more likely to have a higher salary, have a better managerial relationship with your manager, and have a better experience in life and at work. So think about those things, right? Don't let the pressure of society or your family or your friends determine what success looks like to you. You have to define that for yourself. And just a quick snippet before we go into defining your own success, what I want to talk about is an example. I was at a friend's house over the weekend, and we talked about a person, not in a negative light, but we were talking about how social media has these fake gurus, which I have a YouTube video coming out about that. It's not specifically, but it's how you can choose the right coach and consultant. I'll probably put it on a podcast here too. But the reason I mentioned that is because that's what we were talking about. And fake gurus portray this lifestyle that they don't even necessarily live themselves, right? So the reason I bring this up is because there was someone in our friend group. They decided to delete their social media. Now, that's not out of the ordinary. We hear a lot of stories about that, where people just get tired of social media because there's so many things coming their way. But what is particularly relevant for this conversation is that the reason they deleted their social media was because they couldn't take seeing all their friends successful while they weren't engaged, or they weren't getting promoted, or they weren't starting their own business. Whatever it was, they thought that, okay, the easier thing to do is to step away. And the thing that I want to call out here is this is the exact societal pressure to succeed that I'm talking about, with the caveat that those people, for the most part, are not as successful as they say. So that's something to think about, right? Defining your own success will help you view what you see differently. Now, it's not going to take everything away, because I myself, I have huge goals, and I know that everybody around me, they don't have as big as goals as I do. And I don't mean that as a disrespect, but what I do mean is that whenever I see somebody, I still fall victim to it. I have friends who are entrepreneurs. I have friends who are being very successful in their positions. And whenever I see them, I do celebrate them. But in the back of my mind, I'm also saying, am I actually happy for them? You know, I have to ask myself these questions. And if I'm really not truly happy, what type of friend am I? You know? So I had to think about that. And then by defining my own success, I understand, okay, I am happy for them. I'm a little bit feeling like I'm behind. And then I ask myself, is that true? So it's not that I'm not happy for them. It's more so I'm questioning my place in the rat race, right? Because I want to build my own company, which I'm doing now. And I don't think I could have started at any other time frame. I had to go through all these things and learn all these things from different companies, different experiences to be able to build the software company that I'm trying to build. And so when I look at it like that, it's like, oh, I am happy for them and I am moving in the right place because this is my definition of success. Okay, so talking about that, how do you define success? Let's dig into it. All right, in this portion of the podcast, we're going to be talking about defining your own success. We've kind of already started getting there, but we want to talk about how do we define success on our own terms. And so the first step is to figure out what truly makes us happy. And I know that that's broad, but if you reflect on the things that you've done, and I know it's cliche, but ask yourself, what is something that you would do if you didn't need money? What was something that you would do for free, right? For me, the thing that I want to do is help businesses improve in so many different ways. And I would probably do that for free if I didn't need money, right? But I've built an entire business around that. But for you, it could be what makes you happy is a fulfilling career, a meaningful relationship, financial stability, or something that matches with who you are. But reflect on your past and ask yourself, when was I the most happiest, right? And just write a list. It doesn't have to be just one thing. I mean, we're more than just one thing, right? We're not the old school way of thinking about it where it's like, oh, if you don't have a family, then you're not going to be happy. If you don't have a stable job, then you're not going to be happy. It's not like that anymore, luckily. So we have so many different options to think about, and we have so many different outlets out there too. So just think about that, right? And once you know what you want, you can start to set goals and work towards achieving them. So, for example, I've mentioned a few times that I'm starting to build out my own software. Now, I haven't gone into detail on what that software is specifically or anything like that because it's not ready. It's not ready. And I don't mean that in the sense of it's not ready and I'm not going to start. I mean, it's not ready to talk about. But once it is, it'll be there. But now that I know that I want to build out a software that helps improve employees management in organizations or management employees in organizations like IMEO, now I have these goals that I've set in place. So right now I'm finishing up the business plan. By the time this is released, it will be completed. We will have touched down on the initial phases of the development portion, and we will hopefully start having some funding provided. So, okay, enough about that. But the reason that I bring that up is when you know what you want, you have a North Star now. And the benefit of that is the North Star is going from where you are to where you want to be or what you want to achieve. And that creates a journey. And it's important to remember that success is not the end goal. It's the journey. The success is learning how to get to that point of achievement, right? So celebrate the small wins. Find ways to find happiness as you go down the direction that you've identified for what truly makes you happy, right? You should strive to enjoy the process and find joy in the small victories, celebrating the achievements, no matter how small they are. They can help you stay motivated and positive. And I won't go into full detail on this, but whenever I was doing the episode about resolutions at the beginning of a year, that's where we fail, because we set this big lofty goal and we forget to break them down into achievable steps where we can celebrate along the way. And so whenever we set this big lofty or big hairy audacious goal, BHAG, as Jim Collins says, I think it could be somebody else, but when we set those and then we don't break them down into achievable goals, whenever we take that first step and we fail or we don't do it the best way, we automatically lose motivation. But when we simplify those steps and achieve them along the way and we hit those milestones, we can celebrate and continue to be motivated by what we're trying to achieve, even if it takes years or decades to achieve, right? Okay, so now I want to finish out this episode by talking about balancing success and happiness. So whenever we're talking about this, finding a balance between success and happiness can be challenging, obviously, or it wouldn't be a topic that we talk about. Everybody would know how to do it, but it's not impossible, right? It's all about prioritization, making choices that align with our values and goals. So one way to attain balance is by setting boundaries. That's one thing that we haven't talked about yet, is setting those boundaries, right? So as you're defining what makes you happy, you also might want to look into what are you trying to achieve in your life, in your career, in your business. What are your values that you hold dearly, the non-negotiables, right? Think about those things, and those are going to help you set your boundaries. So boundaries are good because you need to learn to say no to things that don't align with your goals and values, and you need to prioritize the things that bring you joy and fulfillment, right? And those can be simultaneously connected, happiness and success. If you tie your happiness to your success and not your success to your happiness, you're going to see a better result. And what I mean by that, just to explain it, if you tie your happiness to your success, that means that during the journey, you're celebrating, you're making sure that you're doing what makes you happy. You are doing things that add meaningfulness to your life. And on the flip side, tying success to your happiness means that you will only be happy when you reach your goal. You see the difference? It's a big difference. And as I mentioned in the first portion, whenever you take this approach, you're going to have a higher salary. You're going to have better managerial support and attention. You're going to have better performance rating scores. You're just going to have a better life inside and outside of work or in your business. All right. Now, another way is to make time for self-care. Now, I'm not like a huge person on this, but what I do specifically is I take my dog Zola, especially whenever it's warmer, but I take her on hikes over at Crowder Mountain. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, or Concord, North Carolina, but it's about an hour drive. So we get to spend that time together, and maybe I'll film one of those because I'm talking to her because I'm excited about the hike, and it just makes me feel happy to get out in nature. And whenever I'm out there, I'll put on a podcast, so I'm still learning. It's just an obsession that I have. But at the same time, I'm looking around me. I'm feeling the ground. I'm seeing these nature aspects that I don't necessarily see because I work from home. I'm in this office a lot. I'm in this house a lot. So it's a way for me to get out and take care of myself, but also take care of Zola. Yeah. So the other part of this is taking care of yourself helps you avoid burnout because you're working on your physical, your mental, and emotional health, which is crucial to your overall well-being. I think we all know that at this point, but just because we know something doesn't mean that we actually do it. And maybe there's a podcast that I can do about this because what came to my mind was common sense versus common practice. And what that means is common sense is understanding, okay, physical, mental, and emotional health is crucial for our well-being. It's the knowledge of the thing. Where common practice is knowing that these are crucial things for our well-being and actually doing it. So practice versus sense, knowledge versus actually doing it. So some of the forms that you can take on self-care: exercising. I mentioned hiking. I exercise every day. So that's another thing that I do for myself. But you don't need a lot of exercise. A lot of people will say 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You don't even need that much. In Shawn Achor's study, one of the things that you have to do is just 10 minutes of exercise. That's literally going outside, walking around your neighborhood. So it's an excuse whenever somebody says, oh, I don't have the time. So exercise, 10 minutes at least. Meditate. I'm not as good as this. I think a lot of people have this issue where their brain doesn't stop. So it's good for me to be active whenever I'm doing something like a hike, because if I'm not paying too much attention, then I might actually fall by hitting a rock, which is not what I want. And then another act of self-care is spending time with your loved ones, right? So I make sure, and I write it every single day in my planner, spend quality time with Caitlin and Zola without any phones, without any computers, without TV, right? And the reason that I do that is because I want to make sure that the time that we spend together, we are connected. But you have to schedule it in where it makes sense, at least in my opinion. And then just finding time for yourself. I think Oprah mentioned that, and I don't know if there's studies behind this, but this is what she does specifically, is she'll sit in silence for 10 minutes every day. And what that does is it slows down the noise of the world. Even listening to this podcast or listening to another podcast, you're still occupied. But if you sit in silence, it's not meditation necessarily, but it's slowing down to give your mind a break, right? You're not necessarily thinking about anything. You're just in the silence. There's no meditation music. There's no HeadPod or AirPods in your ears or podcast, anything. It's just sitting by yourself. And if you want to make it even better, you can go outside and do it. But that's it, right? So whenever it comes to chasing success without sacrificing happiness, don't fall victim to the pressure from society, from your friends or your family, unless it matches with your own definition of success. And then find what that balance of success and happiness is to you, because you can listen to me, you can listen to Oprah, you can listen to whoever you want to, but the only person who is actually going to make this mean something to you is yourself. So in conclusion, chasing success without sacrificing happiness is possible. It's about defining your own success on your terms, finding the balance, prioritizing your well-being. Remember, success is not a destination, it's a journey. That is the hardest thing. It's a journey. So let's enjoy the ride and strive for both success and happiness. All right. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. It might have been a little bit unorganized because I'm in my new setup, but hopefully you'll like it. If you like the setup, leave a comment. But thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.